In Chapter 6, IT Security Policy Frameworks, we're going to get into the important aspects of implementing and enforcing information system security policies. Our learning objectives for this chapter is to describe the issues related to information security systems policy implementation and enforcement. Now, some of the key concepts from this chapter include understanding the building blocks of a security policy framework, to identify the types of documents involved in a security policy framework. We're going to explore the ISS and information assurance considerations. And then also we'll look at the key considerations for creating a security policy framework. So first we'll define what an IT policy framework is. So an IT policy framework refers to a structured approach that encompasses various components such as a policy, standards, baselines, procedures, guidelines, and um, taxonomy. These components collectively form the foundation of an organization's approach to information technology, security, and governance. So within an IT policy framework, the policies are high-level statements that outline the organization's objectives, their rules, responsibilities related to security. Standards, on the other hand, provide more specific requirements and guidelines that must be followed to ensure compliance with those policies. Baselines establish minimum security configurations and settings for various IT systems and infrastructure components. Procedures outline step-by-step instructions on how to perform specific tasks or actions that's in accordance with the policies and standards. The guidelines offer additional recommendations and best practices to supplement the policies and standards. Now, the structure of an IT policy framework, this will often resemble a hierarchy or a tree, with the policies serving as the overarching principles and the other components supporting or expanding on those policies. This hierarchical structure ensures consistency, clarity, and coherence in the organization's security posture. Now, an organization's security posture, as expressed in the IT policy framework, is typically aligned with its risk appetite and risk tolerance. Risk appetite refers to the level of risk that an organization is willing to accept in order to achieve its goals. So it reflects the organization's willingness to take on certain risk in pursuit of its business opportunities. On the other hand, risk tolerance, that relates to the level of accepted variance or deviation from established processes or controls. So it signifies that the organization's threshold for accepting deviations or uncertainties within the defined risk boundaries. So by understanding and defining the risk appetite and risk tolerance, these are crucial elements in developing an effective IT policy framework. These factors shape the organization's approach to risk management, decision making, resource allocation, and the overall security posture. A program framework policy or charter is a high level document that defines the essential elements of a program within an organization. So this serves as a foundational guide for the program's purpose, scope, implementation, and compliance management. Now, this program framework policy or charter, this is typically going to have these key components: a purpose and mission. That's going to clearly articulate the program's overall purpose and mission statement. It will highlight the program's strategic objectives and alignments with the organizational goals. The scope is the document that outlines the boundaries and the scope of the program. This specifies the areas, systems, and processes that fall under its jurisdiction. So this helps establish a clear understanding of what's included and excluded from the program's responsibilities. What does the program cover? The assignment of responsibilities identifies key individuals or roles responsible for the implementation and management of the program. So this includes assigning specific responsibilities, program managers, coordinators, and other stakeholders that are involved in the program's execution. Now, compliance management. So your program's framework policy or a charter, this will establish the framework for ensuring compliance with any relevant laws, regulations, or internal policies. So this will outline the processes and controls necessary to monitor and assess compliance within the program. So by having a well-defined program framework policy, organizations they can ensure that the consistency and alignment in the program's implementation. They can enhance accountability and provide a reference point for decision making and resource allocation. Now, there are some industry standard policy frameworks, and these provide organizations with established guidelines or best practices that they can use for developing and implementing information security policies. So, some of the ones on here we'll briefly discuss the ISO/IEC 27002. It's an international standard. It provides a code of practice for information security management. It offers a comprehensive set of goals, controls, and guidelines for establishing, implementing, maintaining, and continuously improving an information security management system. The next one on the list, the ISO IEC 30105, it focuses on the governance of information security. This one emphasizes the role of a top management in creating an effective information security policy or program. It provides guidance on establishing policies, objectives, and controls that ensure the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of information assets. The ISO 27007, this offers guidelines for auditing the implementation of information security management systems based on the ISO IEC 27001. So this one, it assists organizations in assessing the effectiveness and performance of their security controls and identifying areas of improvement. Last one we'll talk about is the NIST special publication SP 800-53. This was developed by the National Institute of Standards and Technology in the United States. This publication provides a catalog of security controls for federal information systems. So it offers a comprehensive set of controls that can be customized to address specific security requirements. So a policy is a set of high-level statements, beliefs, and goals and objectives that guide an organization's approach to information security. So it serves as a framework to protect the organization's resources and guide employee behavior. Policies provide clearly on the what and why of security measures, outlining the organization's expectations and requirements. So, in addition to defining the overall security stance of an organization, policies also provide specific details on how programs are ran, identify the individual responsible for the day to day security operations. They outline procedures for training and awareness, and also establish mechanisms for ensuring compliance with the policies. So, by establishing a clear and comprehensive policy, an organization can foster a culture of security, and they can ensure that employees understand their roles and responsibilities in safeguarding any information assets. Now, standards play a crucial role in information security. They are the formal documents that provide uniform criteria for evaluating and measuring security policies. They also outline methods to achieve specific goals and establish repeatable processes and practices for compliances with those policies. There are two main types of standards. You have issue specific standards and system specific standards. The issue-specific standards focus on areas of current relevance and concerns to a company. They may address specific security issues or domains, such as data protection, network security, incident response. On the other hand, the system specific standards, these are known as your baseline standards. They concentrate on a secure configuration of a particular system, device, operating system, or application. Now, procedures are written instructions that guide individuals on how to comply with a standard. They provide the specific series of actions or operations that should be executed in the same manner repeatedly. So the purpose of procedures is to support the policy framework and associated standards by codifying the steps that have been proven to yield compliant systems. So they, once again, they ensure consistency and help organizations achieve their security objectives. So some examples of procedures include incident reporting procedures, server configuration procedures, and emergency evacuation procedures. So each of these outline the specific steps that must be followed to meet the desired outcome. Now, with procedures, they should be clear and unambiguous. So they should be written in a manner that leaves no room for misinterpretation. So, and this is to make sure that the individuals understand the exact actions that need to be taken. They should also be designed to be executed consistently so that you can ensure that the same steps are followed each time. Procedures should also be up to date. They should be regularly reviewed and updated to reflect any changes in technology, best practices, or organizational requirements. They should also be validated through testing and simulations. That's to ensure that the effectiveness and identify any potential issues or gaps. Procedures should also be properly documented and accessible to the relevant stakeholders. You want to make it easy to refer to those and follow those established procedures. Now, guidelines are documents that assist individuals in developing procedures or the processes by providing best practices and useful recommendations based on the experience of others. So they serve to clarify issues or problems that may arise after the publication of a standard, and they provide additional detailed information and guidance to aid in the compliance with the standards or baselines. Now, unlike policies, standards, and procedures, guidelines are optional and are not mandatory. However, they are often helpful in providing valuable insight and practical advice for implementing security measures effectively. In some cases, guidelines may become more widely accepted and implemented, leading to their adoption as industry within the industry as a standard. Now, some key characteristics of guidelines. They offer assistance to individuals in developing procedures or processes by providing the proven best practices. They address specific issues or problems that may arise. They offer further clarification and additional information to aid in compliance. Guidelines provide more detailed information, hints, tips, and processes to support the implementation of standards or baselines. Once again, while guidelines are not mandatory, they're often considered valuable resources for organizations, those that are aiming to enhance their security practices. And once again, some cases they're so widely accepted and implemented that these guidelines they may become the industry standard. Now, implementing and maintaining security frameworks they do involve several business considerations that organizations need to address. Need to address. This is included in the cost and the impact. So, implementing and maintaining security framework they do require financial resources. So organizations need to assess the costs associated with acquiring the necessary tools, technologies, and the expertise. Uh, Additionally, they need to think about the ongoing maintenance, updates, and training that should be considered to ensure that the framework remains effective and up to date. Also, they have to think about the impact on employees, customers, and business processes. So, these controls required by the framework may have an impact on those employees, customers, or different business practices the organization's involved in. So, it's important to consider how the framework will affect the day to day operation, your employees' workflow, customers' experiences, and any potential disruption or adjustment that may be required to implement this framework. Now, when it comes to policy and standards development and compliance, there are various roles that play a crucial part in ensuring the security and risk management of information resources within an organization. So, some of these roles include the Chief Information Security Officer. They're responsible for establishing and maintaining security and risk management programs for information resources. Excuse me. They oversee the development and implementation of policy standards and procedures as it's related to information security. An information resource manager is responsible for maintaining policies and procedures that provide for the security and risk management of information resources. So they ensure that the appropriate safeguards are in place to protect these resources and comply with any policies and standards um, that may be required. The information resource security officer, they direct the policies and procedures designed to protect information resources. So they would identify vulnerabilities, assess risk, develop security awareness programs that would be used to educate employees about best practices for security. Now, the owners of information resources, they're responsible for carrying out the program that utilizes these resources. Now, this role does not imply personal ownership, but rather refers to individuals or departments that are accountable for the proper use and protection of information resources. So, in this slide, we'll continue our discussion with the roles involved in the policy and standard development and compliance. First up is the custodian of information resources, and they're responsible for providing technical facilities, data processing, and other support services to the owners and users of information resources. The technical managers provide technical support for the security of information resources. So they ensure that the appropriate technical controls are in place to protect those assets and enforce the compliance with policies and standards. The internal auditors, they play a vital role in conducting periodic risk-based reviews to ensure the effectiveness of information security resource security policies and procedures. So they assess compliance with policies, identify potential vulnerabilities, and make recommendations to improve the security measures. Control partners are responsible for ensuring security policies align with the organization's risk appetite and regulatory requirements. So they'll monitor and verify operational compliance to minimize the risk and maintain a secure environment. And the users, they have access to information resources based on the control and access rules defined by the owners. So they do play an essential role in adhering to established policies and utilizing the resources in a secure manner. Now, when developing and implementing security policies, it's important to consider information assurance. So, three key aspects of information assurance are the confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Confidentiality focuses on ensuring that sensitive information is protected from unauthorized access or disclosure. So, measures such as encryption, access control, and secure communication channels help maintain confidentiality. Integrity ensures that the information remains accurate, complete, and unaltered throughout its life cycle. So, some data integrity controls such as checksums, digital signatures, version controls, these help prevent unauthorized modifications or tampering. The availability refers to the accessibility and usability of information and resources when needed. So these are, using measures like redundancy, backup systems, and disaster recovery plans. Those are used to help ensure the uninterrupted access to critical assets. So creating an effective IT security policy framework does require careful planning and implementation. So some of the best practices to consider is using various communication methods. So you want to utilize different communication channels, such as presentations, videos, panel discussions, road shows, and newsletters. That's to ensure widespread understanding and awareness of the policies. You want to ensure that the management support for the policy is clear, especially when employees may feel overwhelmed by the volume of policies, directives, and guidelines and procedures. You want to clearly state the core principles and goals of the framework up front. So this provides a clear direction on what the framework aims to achieve. You gain buy-ins from the stakeholders on the goals of the policies, and then collaborate with them on developing the specific measures and approaches for implementation. And you also want to involve key user groups in the process by offering them choices on how to achieve the policy goals. This helps in gaining their ownership and commitment to the framework. So in this chapter, we went over a couple of things about the security policies frameworks. So when you're developing a security policy framework, it is important to consider the building blocks of a secure security policy framework. So a security policy framework consists of various components. This includes your policies, your standards, baselines, procedures, guidelines. These elements work together to establish a comprehensive approach to information security. You also have to consider the types of documents for a security policy framework. So you have different types of documents that are utilized to address specific aspects of security. These documents include policies, which provides a high-level statement and objectives, the standards, which establish uniform criteria and methods, and also the baselines. Those focus on a system-specific configuration. Procedures are going to provide the step-by-step instructions. And you have guidelines that offer additional guidance and best practices. Also, keep in mind when developing a security policy framework, it is essential to consider the principles of confidentiality, integrity, and availability. These form the foundation of information assurance and guide the implementation of security controls and measures to protect critical assets. There are several factors that should be taken into account when creating a security policy framework. These include aligning the framework with the organization's goals and objectives, involving key stakeholders in the developmental process, addressing legal and regulatory requirements, ensuring clarity and comprehensibility of policies, and establishing mechanisms for ongoing evaluation and updates. So, by considering these key concepts and factors, organizations can develop a robust security policy framework that effectively addresses their specific security needs and helps protect their information assets.